Well, let's go ahead and get started. I will introduce us, I guess. My name is Darren Alff, and I run the website at bicycletouringpro.com. For the last 15 years, I've been bicycle touring all around the world, and for the last 8 years or so, I've been running the website at bicycletouringpro.com and helping other people plan, prepare, and execute their own bicycle touring adventures. And Kevin, who is on the call here with me today, my friend Kevin from Australia, and I recently did a bike tour, a month-long bike tour in the island nation of Taiwan. Yeah, we wanted to just talk about the trip a little bit, share some of our favorite moments, tell you what it's like to bike tour in Taiwan, and answer any questions that you might have, whether they be about Taiwan or about bicycle touring in general. So yeah, we'll talk. Kevin and I will talk about some of the basics for the first 20 minutes here or so, and then we will open it up to questions and answers. So there should be a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll enable that chat box now. And if you have a question or anything while we're talking, feel free to type that question in, and we will try to address it. And yeah, that's it. So we'll talk for 20 minutes, and then we'll try to answer your questions. Before we begin, I should say maybe how Kevin and I even know each other. When was this, Kevin, that we met? 2012?
Yeah, 2012.
So Kevin and I did this guided bike tour across Switzerland together with a company called Bike Switzerland in 2012, and that's where we met. And Kevin and I were the two vegetarians on the bike tour, so I think that was like our connecting thing at the very surface level. And yeah, we've just kept in touch ever since. And the way I tell the story, at least, is Kevin sent me an email and said, what are you doing next year, basically. This was I think in late 2013 or something, you sent me the message and said, what are you doing in October 2014? And I was like, I don't know, nothing really. And you said, do you want to go bike touring in Taiwan for a month? And I said, yeah, that sounds good, and a whole year passed, and then we went on a bike tour together. So yeah, it was really cool how that worked out. Yeah, that's the story, right?
Yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah. So we were just talking a second ago about the fact that very few people even know where Taiwan is. What do you know about Taiwan, Kevin?
Well, I didn't know a whole lot about it until we went, but during the Vietnam War time, I was in the military here in Australia. We were in Vietnam, and quite a few of the army people used to go off to Taiwan, Taipei especially, for R&R. And people used to talk about, I just heard on the grapevine about Taiwan, and I guess that just sowed the seed in my mind, or put the word in my mind anyway. And it was something that's just been sort of bubbling along for a long time, really. And when I started to think about where I might go cycling overseas next time, Taiwan just popped into my mind. So I did some reading, had a look around, gave it some thought. And it just seemed more and more and more appealing. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed appealing. And that's when I got in touch with you and said, why don't we do this?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that's been sitting there percolating around for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I told you this when we were on tour together, but I would never have really thought of going bike touring in Taiwan. It's just never kind of come up in my mind for some reason, And say what?
I was going to say it's not renowned as a tourist venue. I mean, from Australia, there's lots of opportunities to go to places it's only a 7-hour flight to Singapore or Kuala Lumpur or Bali or any number of places, close local places in the tropics, and that's where people would choose if they were going to go on a holiday in Asia. That's where they would choose to go, by and large. Taiwan doesn't even figure. I mean, Taiwan, nobody would ever think about Taiwan as a destination to go and spend some time, and yet it's equally accessible as all those other places. But for some reason, people here don't, or people anywhere, we didn't see a lot of tourists when we were there, apart from, Chinese and Japanese. But, it's not a tourist destination that springs immediately to mind.
No, but I mean, I was really surprised at how much I liked it. I mean, I had concerns at the very beginning about it being too populated. I don't like places where you can't move. You know what I mean? And Taiwan is like a very small island with 23 million people living on it. And so this was one of my fears at the beginning, was that we were just going to be in traffic the whole time, and it wasn't like that at all. At all. It really wasn't.
No, not at all. The 23 million people are fairly concentrated, aren't they? And that was a kind of, not a shock to me, but that I quickly realised that that big bony mountain range down the middle of the island, which takes up, maybe, I don't know how much, half the island perhaps, it just really confines people to that very populated west coast and that sparsely populated east coast. And then with Taiwan, with most of the population way up in the north. So it really leaves the rest of the country. There's a good, 60% of the country which is not populated or very sparsely populated.
Yeah.
With only a couple of.
Yeah. I was looking at like statistics online, and Taiwan I think is like if I remember correctly, is like 13,000 square miles or something like that. And when you compare that to like sizes of other places, like in Europe, for example, it's about the size of Moldova, which is like a really quite small country, maybe the smallest country in Europe. It's like the sixth the size of Ireland, if that makes any sense, and it's just a little bit bigger than all of the islands of Hawaii put together, So yeah, it's a pretty small place.
Wouldn't be much bigger than Holland, would it?
Probably not. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Well, I suppose Holland's about 400 k's, from north to south, and I guess Taiwan's probably 400 or 500 k's from north to south, from Taipei down to Kenting.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Not a lot bigger.
Yeah. Like you were saying that it's easy to get to Taiwan, and I think that's one of the concerns for people going there with a bicycle. How do you get there exactly?
Yep.
You flew in from where?
I flew in from Adelaide in South Australia.
Yeah.
And I flew with Malaysian Airlines, which flies directly from Adelaide to Kuala Lumpur, and then Kuala Lumpur directly to Taipei. So, when I was checking it out, not only was I looking at the cost of fares and so forth, which was quite cheap. It was only $900 Australian return, which was super cheap. Maybe a bit more than that now. I was also looking at things like how do I get my bike there, and they've got a 30-kilogram allowance in economy, which includes a bike. If you've got a bike package up, they're happy to take it, providing it weighs around 15 kilos. So I bought myself a solid plastic bicycle box from Environo Box, or Enviro Box, and it's a reusable box. And I packed the bike up in that, and there was no trouble at all. Just travelled beautifully, had no damage. No problems whatsoever. So it was very accessible. It was only a short flight, 7 hours or something, to Kuala Lumpur, then a bit of a turnaround time, a few hours, and then onto another plane straight to Taipei, and arrived at 6:30 in the morning, which was a good time.
Yeah. And I flew from London, England. I paid $850 round trip for my flight, which connected through Shanghai, China. I had an overnight layover there, which was really long, but it allowed me to see Shanghai and then easily just pop into Taipei. So it really wasn't bad at all. And yeah, so pretty easy to get there actually, and it was a lot cheaper than I thought it was going to be actually. So that was good.
Yep.
What were your impressions of Taipei? Taipei is the capital city, and New Taipei, I think, is the largest city in all of Taiwan. What were your impressions of the city?
Well, My favourable impressions of the place started, of Taiwan in general, and Taipei in particular, started at the airport. I just thought it was such an easy airport to kind of navigate and to get around. And, there seemed to be plenty of flights coming in. It was a busy airport, but it was just, everyone seemed relaxed and easy, and I was amazed how quickly I sort of got through the whole thing, and next thing I was wheeling my box out to the front, and immediately in front of me there was the woman and the father who were picking me up to take me back to the accommodation. So I was just so impressed. I just thought it was such a comfortable and easy place to get around. I've travelled a lot in Asia when I was in the Navy and then in other times, and I've always found most Asian terminals of any kind are pretty difficult to negotiate and pretty frenetic, and things get lost and things get misunderstood. There wasn't a bit of that in Taipei.
Yeah.
Getting into Taipei, yeah, it's a big sprawling kind of city, and it's full on, but still pretty easy as far as big Asian cities go. It's easy to get around, fantastic metro system, train systems, just brilliant. Cheap, easy to use, stations everywhere, plenty of eateries, people are relaxed, people are friendly, extraordinarily helpful. So if you're in a big city, if you want to be fairly comfortable in a big city, Taipei's one of the more comfortable, I would have thought.
Yeah, and like I said, like I was really, I've seen these videos of Asian, crosswalks and stuff where you can't even get across the street practically. There's so many people, and that's kind of what I was envisioning for Taipei. But it wasn't like that at all. It was really nice. Yeah. And I found navigating Taipei to be really easy. Like it's kind of a grid system in a way. So it's pretty simple to kind of get figure out where you are. But yeah.
Well, the other thing about Taipei is that it's really very close to everything. I mean, there's mountains. I mean, when you're coming in from the airport, you just look over and there's the mountains. The mountains are, they're right there, and you could easily, probably within, the day we rode out of Taipei, I think we rode for possibly, an hour maybe, and we were out of the city and we were right into the mountains. It was straight into it. So it's really, for a big city, it's very accessible to the countryside and everything else.
Yeah. Yep. What should we talk about next? The cycling infrastructure or places to see, or what do you get? What should we cover? Kevin?
Well, cycling infrastructure, I mean, that was what was on our mind the day we left. We had that fantastic accommodation in Taipei, which I found on the net, but it was a young woman's house, and we stayed there, and she was tremendously generous. We were able to reconstruct our bikes in her house, and they even stored our bike boxes for us at no extra cost, and they provided a service to the airport and back. So, all things considered, that was a wonderful stay. And then when we left, we weren't really sure what to expect. We thought some pretty heavy traffic was probably going to be the first thing. But, once we got lost a few times and got told to get off the road by the police a couple of times, or at least once, after that, it was moderately plain sailing. And even though it's a big city, you get used to the idea that the traffic is really quite calm. In a way, there's no malice or aggro, and if you hear somebody beep their horn behind you, it just is a courtesy thing. They're just saying, "Look, I'm coming up behind you." They've got bike lanes, they've got scooter lanes that are at least 2 meters wide, so you can just cruise along in the scooter lane. Everybody just seems to, I think the rule there, and we talked about this a bit, Darren and I think the rule there is don't hit the vehicle in front of you. And that's what they're interested in. They got an eye out for you the whole time.
Yeah.
So I found even that first day getting out of Taipei, even though it was a real introduction to Taipei traffic, I didn't find it as bad. Excuse me, as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a pretty horrible kind of drive out there, or ride out. But in fact, it was pretty easy. And then suddenly we started going uphill, and there we were in the mountains. So I think the bike infrastructure is excellent. We found that it got better and better and better as we got as we got further into it. So Yeah, just I was immediately impressed by the infrastructure for bikes. People are used to seeing cyclists because there's people are crazy about cycling in Taiwan. I think it's only been in the last maybe 10 years or 15 years that people were telling me that everyone's into cycling, and so people on the road on their motor scooters or in their cars, they're absolutely used to seeing lots and lots of cyclists on the road. So it was really easy from that point of view. Just the other sort of stuff that we encountered was even the big main highways. Once again had 2 lanes of traffic, all going pretty fast. A big 2-meter wide scooter lane, and a big 1.5 meter or a meter of shoulder. So there was never a time when you couldn't, make sure you had plenty of distance between you and the buses and trucks that were going past.
Yeah. I mean, the only time really when there wasn't like a big shoulder was when we were up kind of in the mountains areas, and there wasn't like a divided bike lane per se, but there also were barely any cars. I mean, so I never felt like threatened or in any way, I don't know. What did you think about those mountain roads?
Yeah, well, they were generally, as you described, particularly that one that we went up that day to the start of the Walami Walk, and really there was no traffic on the road. I don't think we might have seen 1 or 2 cars. The 2 days that we climbed up from Sun Moon Lake up to Wuling Pass, which is up at 3,250 meters, those 2 kind of hairy days in the fog and so on. Yeah, they were a bit hairy, but even then, the traffic still kind of looked out for you, even though the visibility was only about 2 or 3 meters, and there was traffic going in both ways, and often only 1 lane. I didn't really ever feel that the traffic was just about to plow into me. I always felt that the situation was under control.
Yeah.
I didn't always feel under control. I felt completely exhausted at times, but I thought the traffic was fine. If I just kind of kept an eye out, they could see me and I was fine.
Yeah.
So even on the hairier roads, there's no aggravation. In fact, there's quite the opposite. People often cheer you or clap you as they go past. If people are standing on the side of the road, cheer you and clap you. I thought we wandered a couple of times. I thought we wandered into some sort of race or something where people were cheering us up. But
that's so
it's
true.
just that's what they're like. They're just friendly. They're amazing.
Yeah, the people in Taiwan were really incredible. I mean, I've been to so many places in the world, and it seems like everywhere I've been, there's always like somebody asking you for money or asking you to buy something from them or whatever. There wasn't any of that in Taiwan. Like, no one ever asked me for money the whole time I was there. No one, I mean, people were really just beyond friendly, really surprising. The whole time I kept waiting. I kept thinking, okay, where's the bad part of this country? Because I haven't seen it yet. You know what I mean? Got to be up here around this next bend. I know it. Nope, couldn't find it. Yeah.
No, there was never. In fact, I had a couple of instances where I bought, fruit or something to eat, and I turned to go, paid and turned to go, and the person who was running the shop sort of called me back and gave me money back and said that they'd overcharged me. So, I thought, am I in Asia or where am I? It wouldn't happen in Australia, let alone in Asia.
Yeah.
But that's how they were, extraordinarily friendly.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, there was that one day where we were trying to find like a restaurant in town, and the guy said, "Oh, get in my car, and I'll take you over there." So he drives us to this restaurant way the heck out of town, and then like we get there and we're like, and then he says, "Oh, I'll buy you dinner. And I'm thinking, what the heck? You don't even know who we are, But he wasn't the only person like in Taiwan doing that. I thought we had stumbled into some kind of scam or something, but he was really just like some crazy nice guy, Yeah,
he was. Yeah, there wasn't a problem. He then offered to drive us somewhere else, sort of 10 k's down the road to another place that he thought was a restaurant, a little vegetarian cafe. But we said no at that time. We'd find something else. But Yeah, it was just that, normally in some other parts of the world you might think that's a bit suspicious or a bit odd, but it just seemed to go with the whole flavour of the place, really. It was all pretty much like that all over the place.
Yeah. One of the sorry to cut you off. One of the interesting things that was kind of happening to us over and over again while we were traveling together there in Taiwan was that people kept asking us if we were father and son, because of our age difference here. But we do kind of look like that. But did you I was trying to think of Taiwan from a perspective of who would enjoy this, you know what I mean? Because I think certain people like certain types of, some people like climb, some people like the scenery, some people just want to stay on bike paths, etc. Who do you think Taiwan is built for? Is it what's the ideal person to go to Taiwan?
Yeah. I think any cyclist can go to Taiwan and have a good time. If you're a casual recreational cyclist who doesn't much tackle hills or mountains and so on, you can cycle on the flat. There's plenty of places that you could cycle. For example, you could sit on some of those highways that are pretty flat in most parts, and then you could actually check it out. You can find a part there where it's a little bit mountainous, where the mountains come down to the sea perhaps, and you can actually catch a train. They've got we'll talk about the train infrastructure for bikes, which is just fantastic as well. So if you decided you didn't want to tackle a couple of mountains, you could easily jump on the train and bypass a bit of the mountains and get off on somewhere else and cycle on. And certainly down the south, around Kenting, where the beautiful beaches are, it's very easy to get around down there. On the other hand, if you wanted to do something super fast, you could get on those highways and really put the foot down. And you can hammer your way around Taiwan if you really like that sort of fast road work. Or on the other hand, if you wanted to head to the mountains, and if you're a climber, you can head off into the mountain. There's no shortage of roads that you can head off into some spectacular and steep mountains. Yeah. 2 days up Wuling, that was something else, and you could even do it over longer. You could do it over 3 or 4 days if you wanted to really take your time and camp out and do all sorts of things. So I think it's a place for everybody, really.
I agree.
There's a lot of
I agree. I think it would be a great place to go as a beginner, really, someone that wants to get started with bike touring, just because it's so safe. There's so much cycling infrastructure, and the variety of the terrain is enough, I think, to keep you interested. The only thing I don't think that Taiwan has is a lot of off-road cycling. I didn't see a lot of. I mean, there was some that was maybe more just kind of junk roads, but I didn't see a whole lot of mountain biking, for example, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I have heard of a couple of mountain bikers who went there. In fact, a friend of mine here sent me a link with somebody's article about mountain biking, and there is a little bit of mountain biking there. I guess if you were a keen mountain biker, you'd have to check it out and find out where it is. But I imagine up there in the mountains there's probably a fair bit of mountain biking, but we weren't looking for it, so we probably missed it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think for beginners and so on, it's a great place because if you want to camp, there's camping. If you want to stay in hotels, there's hotels. If you want to eat in cafes, there's cafes. If you want supermarkets, there's plenty of those. It's really got everything is just so convenient and easy.
Yeah. Well, we've already talked. We're already half an hour in here, but what was your favorite part of the whole trip, Kevin?
Well, I thought the mountains were spectacular. I think the few days that we spent up Wuling were going up Wuling and then that exhilarating 90 k's downhill down the other side. That was probably one of the big highlights. It was a highlight from many points of view. I mean, I was exhausted the 2 days going up, particularly the second day in the fog and in the cold. Yeah. And I was kind of, pretty much at the, the outer edge of my endurance. I felt, I was pretty pushed that day. That was certainly one of the highlights. I think, the days that we spent just sitting on the beach talking and so forth were also highlights as well. There were plenty of opportunities where we just found a bit of deserted beach and just sat on a rock and chatted and just passed a bit of time or read books one afternoon, I remember.
Yeah.
So, there's lots and lots and lots of highlights. I think finding that little town that night on the west coast, I think it was called Chishan, where the road was closed off and it was all those markets, and we wandered up and down the street of the markets. I thought that, and then we walked across that beautiful bridge across the river.
Yep.
I thought that was a real highlight too. That was a beautiful town, totally unexpected. I just expected, a industrial Western Taiwanese town, but in fact it was a beautiful little place, and once again very friendly and easygoing.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite part, I think, would have to be the mountains, like you said. I really enjoyed that, and there was one day where we got separated, kind of on the west side of the country, and at the point after we got separated, we were going through a bunch of plantations and kind of stuff up in the mountains, and with some really spectacular views and palm trees and all kinds of cool stuff up there. That was probably my favorite riding of the whole trip, because it was like short little up and down kind of, but way up in the mountains. It was cool. I really enjoyed that. And of course, I enjoyed the 7-Elevens all across the country, and Taiwan has about 1.5 million 7-Elevens. Like every corner there's a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart, and these are like two identical chains of like gas station stores basically, where they have a bunch of junk food and almost anything that you could possibly need to survive basically. Like you can get your blood taken there, you can, I don't know, like make copies of papers there, you could do all, you can microwave food there, it's everything. Yeah, so 7-Elevens like keep you alive in Taiwan.
And they've all got good bathrooms.
Yeah, and good bathrooms, and the other thing too that I liked about Taiwan was like, there were public bathrooms that were free, first of all, you know what I mean, and clean, like free and clean, and all over the place. It was really, I coming from Europe where you got to pay to go $1 to go to the bathroom or whatever. That's kind of nice to see. So.
Even the most remote village seem to have a really nice little bathroom set up. The public one.
Yep.
The other thing it's worth mentioning too is even though we did spend sometimes riding on major kind of highway roads, there are also those lots and lots of little country roads, and they're called country roads on the map, that we rode along where we barely saw a car, sometimes all day, maybe perhaps 2 or 3 cars, so it was really quite remote in a way. A village every now and then, but there really were nothing much out there, and they were very, very pleasant riding, I thought, of that country road system. It was beautiful. I think of riding down towards Kenting the day, I think it might have been the 199 or something. It was just a magical road to ride down.
Yeah. While we're talking about, sorry to cut you off. While we're talking about some of the roads that we rode on, one of the people watching asked, Yumna was asking, what was your hardest struggle when you did your bike tour in Taiwan? I think I know what the answer to that is for both of us probably. And it was the day, 2 days after we left Sun Moon Lake. Sun Moon Lake is the largest lake in Taiwan. It's kind of in central western Taiwan, kind of. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so we spent like 3 nights at Sun Moon Lake, and then we did a 2-day ride. We kind of split the ride in half, but a 2-day ride up to the top of, what's it called, Kevin?
Wuling Pass.
Wuling Pass, and it's it's the highest, I think the highest road in Taiwan. It's like what, 11,000 feet or something like that, 10,000 feet.
3,250 meters.
Yeah, Kevin knows the stats better than I do. But really, really high. And the second day that we were climbing up this hill, it was super foggy, and you could not see anything. Like, there was really low visibility, and narrow road and cars passing us and stuff, and super steep as well. And that sounds kind of scary, but I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit because I was just like in my zone, you know. I was just like, put your head down and just keep going, you know. But I know that was probably the hardest day for both of us, I think, unless you have something, unless you disagree.
No. It was definitely the hardest day. Yeah. A couple of the other days were when we first got there in the late October or the middle of October. Once we got riding, it was still fairly hot, and some of those days we were a bit trying too, just with riding in 33 degrees Celsius kind of heat with a bit of 50 or 60% humidity. It was some of those days were pretty trying. I remember we were both pretty exhausted a couple of days of.
I know I was exhausted riding in the heat. I don't know if you were. I was about to pass out or something. But yeah, it was really hot. Yeah. Really quick, Kevin, what is the food like in Taiwan?
Well, the food, because I'm vegetarian, I'm always on the lookout for vegetarian food, and there's a very good system of vegetarian buffets around the place that you can find, and extremely cheap. For $3 or $4, you can buy yourself quite a large meal.
Yeah.
And but if you weren't a vegetarian, if you're just looking for other food, it's a culture that likes to eat out. So there's a heap of quite traditional foods to eat. All over the place, but there's also, in the bigger towns at least, there's the more familiar takeaway food chains that people would see, McDonald's or KFCs and those kinds of things. You can always get French fries in some of the big towns. So it's really easy to get very, very good food. I mean, sometimes it's a bit eccentric. You ask for a burrito or something, it doesn't quite look like a burrito, but there you go. It looks like a Taiwanese burrito.
Yeah,
and that's okay. You can do that, but the food's great, and there's plenty of it. It's slightly on the bland side, I found. I used to sort of want to jazz mine up with a bit of chili and so forth. And surprisingly, the food in the buffets is sort of lukewarm. It's not hot food, and I found that a little bit difficult to get used to, but it was okay after a while.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Chinese food in general, and so I didn't enjoy really the fact that there was so much Chinese food. But I kind of got used to it, and I became very good with using chopsticks by the end of the trip. So I feel like it was a success in some regard there. But yeah, the food was very good as well. The last thing that I wanted to say, maybe before we open it up for question and answer, is I just posted a link to the photos if you guys want to check out the photos from our trip. One of the things that you'll notice if you look at the pictures is that I'm carrying about twice as much stuff, or 3 times as much stuff as Kevin was on his bicycle. And the only reason that is because I was coming from a year-long bike tour before the Taiwan trip through Europe, so I'm carrying basically everything I own on my bicycle, whereas Kevin flew from home and was just carrying what he needed for this trip. And so if you were to come to Taiwan, you should pack like Kevin. So look at those photos and don't pack like me, pack like Kevin, because Kevin did it correctly. Most people that go to Taiwan pack in such a way, it's called light touring. There are multiple types of bike touring, and what you probably want to do in Taiwan is called light touring. And light touring is where you carry the gear that you're going to need in 1 or 2 bags on the back of your bicycle. Can you talk a little bit, Kevin, just about why you packed so lightly and how you were able to do that?
Yep, sure. Well, I knew we'd agreed we were going to camp from time to time if we felt like it or if we needed to. So I had everything I needed to camp in. I had a mat, a lightweight mat, and I had also my sleeping bag and a sort of a sophisticated-looking bivy bag. So I had everything I needed to camp, all of which was really lightweight. packed in really easily into the bags I had, into the panniers that I had. And then I decided I'd take 2 sets of cycling clothes and 2 T-shirts and a pair of shorts that I could change into and a pair of sandals. So that was really all. I didn't need 4 seasons of clothes. I really only needed 1 or 2 seasons and a good raincoat, and that's all I really needed. I used every single thing that I took, and I didn't really want anything else. There wasn't a time when I thought, no, I should have brought so and so. I should have brought so and so. There was really nothing that I needed. I was able to just wash things as they dry fairly fast. So yeah, I just decided that I wasn't going to carry a lot of gear because I'm not as young as I once was, and I just thought, well, why push all this stuff around if I'm not going to be using it? And I apply the same philosophy to walking in the bush. When I'm walking and camping, that I take as little as possible. What you carry, you have to lug up the hills. So it didn't seem for me, it didn't seem a lot of point carrying anymore, and I ended up carrying about 10 kilos. So Darren was constantly picking up my bike and saying, "God, this is light. Oh, God, this is light." But and it was light. I've got a Van Nicholas titanium bike, which can be configured as a fairly quick road Audax kind of bike. You can strip it down, or you can put stuff on it. It's got all the braze-ons for panniers and so forth, so you can then load it up as a light tourer. And it performed beautifully as a light touring bike. It didn't give me an ounce of trouble at all.
Yeah. One of the things I think that maybe you should have packed that you didn't was a phone of some kind, because Taiwan has really good cell reception and internet all across the country for the most part, and I had a phone with me, and I was using that to connect to the internet and watch videos on the computer and all kinds of stuff, update Bicycle Touring Pro from the road. And Kevin didn't have a phone at all, and so there were 2 times I think on the trip where we got separated from one another, and really we had no way of getting in touch because I couldn't call Kevin and say, "Where are you? Where'd you go?" You know what I mean? And I think it would have been easier if you had a phone, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. But so many people now, almost everybody has a phone nowadays, and so if you have a phone, bring it to Taiwan, and yeah, it's easy to use there, and you can get a SIM card for your phone for super cheap. Like I paid $30 for unlimited internet for a month, and there's much cheaper plans there as well, $20 for 2 gigs of internet or something like that. So yeah, that's it. Kevin, is there anything else you want to say? I kind of want to open it up for questions and answers if people have questions for us.
Yeah, open it up. That's fine. Yep.
Okay. So there's a chat box here on the right-hand side of the screen. If you have a question about Taiwan or about bicycles in general that you want to ask either myself or Kevin, you can type in a question. Because we're kind of doing the webinar at a weird time today, I got some emails from people in advance that emailed me questions that they wanted answered, Kevin. So maybe you can help me answer some of these. I'm trying to find a good one for you. So one of the questions I got was from Don, and he says, how do I find bike-friendly places to go bicycle touring? You've done a lot of bike tours in the past, Kevin. I mean, how do you pick your locations for your tours? Do you think about bike-friendliness, or do you just go to where you're interested in going?
Yeah, no, I don't think too much about bike-friendliness. I just decide that's a place I'd like to go, and I go. I think bike friendliness depends to some degree on how you kind of carry on yourself. So if you're kind of friendly and happy, then people around you tend to be friendly and happy, even those who are a bit cross with you if they're held up in traffic. But Yeah, look, I don't really think about bike friendliness per se. I just get on the bike and ride there and see what happens. And I've always found that people have been, if I treat them in a reasonable way, they treat me in a reasonable way. I've never really had any major problems at all wherever I've been.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, I guess riding in Australia is as bike unfriendly a place as you're ever likely to ride in. So I'm fairly seasoned at riding in places where bicycles are not really all that favourably looked upon, particularly over the next 2 weeks when the tour down under comes here and there's about 4 zillion bicycles on the road and the motorists all get a bit aggro. So yeah, I'm used to that, but I'm glad to say overseas or elsewhere we don't seem to get that.
Yeah, I grew up cycling in Los Angeles, which is a place where nobody is used to seeing a bicycle, basically. So yeah, I feel the same kind of way. I don't even think about bike friendliness at all. I just think about where I want to go. But that being said, like I know that some people pick locations exclusively on whether it's safe to go biking there. Whether there is a dedicated bike path or something. And the question I think that Don was asking was, how do you find those locations? You know what I mean? And I think Taiwan would be a really good place to do a bike tour, in part largely because of these scooter lanes that are all across the country. Like, you really do have the whole lane to yourself a lot of times, and there are some areas, at least, where, like through the Rift Valley and stuff, where you are riding on a dedicated bike path completely separated from vehicle traffic. But one of the things that I've done recently in recent years, like if you're trying to find places where it's bike friendly, is look at where there are guided bike tours in the world. And in addition to running bicycletouringpro.com, I also run this GoBicycletouring.com website. And if you look at the map there of where there are tours, like these locations are bike-friendly locations, and that's why there's bike tours there. So I'd look at that map and use that map on that website as kind of a scouting source to find good bike touring locations. We got some questions here, Kevin. I'm going to try to read them really quick.
Yep.
Xavier is asking, how did you find interesting things to see and do while we were in Taiwan, and how much planning did we do before and after the tour, as far as where we were going to go and all that kind of stuff? I think I can answer the first part of it. Kevin had a Lonely Planet book that we were using for a lot of the trip. As far as just kind of reading about each of the cities that we were going into, and even where to find the hotels and the hostels and stuff. So yeah, we were using the Taiwan's Lonely Planet book as a resource, right, Kevin?
Yep. And also on the net, I mean, I did a lot of reading of stuff on the net, people who had blogged, who had ridden around in Taiwan, and so I got a feel for the places that people were saying that the don't miss kind of places. I mean, there were other places we went to that were not mentioned on those, places like Wulu Gorge when we went up there and stayed. But places like Taroko Gorge, mentioned so much when you read about Taiwan, and Sun Moon Lake and places like that. So they're the must-see sort of places. Kenting down the south, they're the must-see kind of places. And then, you can't find them easy. I think, Javier, there's another question there about how much did we plan beforehand, and I don't think we planned all that much beforehand. I think our view, Javier, with this was to just really play it by ear as much as possible, just arrive and see what happens and just launch ourselves off into Taiwan and see where we ended up. And I thought that was pretty successful myself. It wasn't over-planned. We just sort of went and everything fell into place really nicely.
Yeah. one of Xavier's questions further down, he was saying, would you recommend a clockwise or counterclockwise trip around Taiwan? I would certainly do it the way that we did. I think that was great because we started out in Taipei and then went clockwise, right, around Taiwan. And the eastern coast of Taiwan is the less populated side of the country. And so the cycling there was much more relaxed, I think, than it was on the western side. And so, yeah, we were able to cycle down the eastern side of the country through the Rift Valley and along the beaches of Taiwan. And then once we reached the bottom of Taiwan, we went north up the western side of the country, and which is the more populated side. And by then, we were kind of used to cycling in Taiwan. We knew what the roads were like. We knew what the traffic was like. And we felt comfortable riding in that kind of an environment. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend myself a clockwise ride around the country.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that we had really going for us, and whether this is true every year or not, I don't know, but we had a beautiful kind of northeasterly breeze behind us for most of it. And some of those days was lovely just to have that breeze at our back. And I noticed when we got up into the west coast and we turned to go north, we had the same kind of breeze, and it was going was a little bit tougher. So I don't know whether there's a northeasterly prevailing wind at that time of the year, but certainly the way we did it clockwise, I think, would be the way to go.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
Yep. Xavier was also mentioning the tunnels that we encountered in multiple areas of Taiwan. And there are quite a few tunnels, especially when you head into the mountains. I would recommend you bring lights, a rear light, just for those tunnels.
Yeah, but even a flashing white light on the front handlebars too, because there's a lot of traffic coming at you. In some instances, there's a lot of traffic coming at you. There was one instance where we elected to catch a train to miss one section because we were warned on a number of occasions. We were warned that there was a particularly hazardous part of the highway with lots and lots of tunnels and lots of trucks. So there was one little section we did heed everybody's advice, and we jumped on a train and we just bypassed that section, and that was the section from Suao down to Hualien. And from people I spoke or things I've read since, I think it was a good decision to make. I think it was a pretty hairy proposition, but yeah, going with tunnels, or I think have a good tail light and a good plenty of reflection and a bit of light up front. Because they're pretty dark and a lot of them are pretty long.
Yeah. Xavier was saying, what would you have done differently if you were to do the trip all over again? What would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Well, coming from Australia, I was restricted in my visa. I could only get a 30-day visa. So I wasn't sure. At first I thought that, maybe plenty of time to get around and do things. But on reflection, once I've come home, I've thought about things and I've thought, well, there were places we went where I wouldn't have minded actually, in retrospect, having a couple more days. Mm. For example, the road, Darren, you mentioned, that was the coffee road, where we got separated, let's say. Yeah. And, that was sort of what they call the coffee road. And it was very beautiful up there. And I think we probably could have spent, a day or two up there just, relaxing or riding around or finding little back roads to ride on in the mountains. So that could, I think, what would I do differently? I'd probably try and get a little bit more time so that I could stop a bit more frequently and just explore the mountains and so forth. The times that we did stop for a few days here and there, we had, we stopped in Hualien for a few days, we stopped in Taitung for a few days, we stopped, down south in Kenting for a few days, Sundoon Lake for a few days, and they were fabulous stops. But I wouldn't mind a few more of those and doing day rides and things. There were quite a few opportunities.
Yeah, I think for me the thing that I would have maybe changed was I probably would have waited one more day in Taipei before we left, because I was still like super tired the day that we left Taipei. You know, like I think I was just feeling jet lagged still.
Yep.
And we rode out to Taipei, which was kind of stressful, not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but kind of stressful. And then we went straight into the mountains, and I think that just kicked my butt, like on day one, you know. And so I think if I don't know if I would do it differently, I'd probably cycle out of Taipei, but try to avoid the mountains right away. You know, try to stick to the flats or something, like, you know, go north around the beach or something like that, maybe. Because yeah, those first couple days just kicked my butt. I was tired and dehydrated and everything, so that's what I would do differently. But like I usually tell people, you know, especially when they're flying to start their trip, that they should schedule 2 days or something in the beginning just to get settled. You know, because a lot of people try to fly into the airport and just go straight away, and that's a recipe for disaster, I think. You know? Yeah, that's all. Okay, well, it's been an hour here. Is there anything else you want to say, Kevin?
I think Javier also mentioned something about cleaning clothes. There's a question there. And that was really the least of our problems. You know, we could just wash things out in the hostels we stayed in or wherever. That was really a very simple thing where neither of us had a lot of clothes to wash and dry out or to change into. So that was pretty simple, just to find a tap and give them a wash and hang them over the bike or something overnight. And yeah, that was easy.
Yeah.
I think the moral of that story is don't take too much. And what you do take, make sure it's quick drying kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Any last words, Kevin? How would you sum up the trip? What recommendations for others? What do you have to say?
Well, I think Taiwan's just you know, we've said it again and again that it's a fabulous touring cycling destination, and I'd really advise anybody who's thinking about it to just do it. It's a wonderful place, and it'll give you lots of surprises.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably. I've been in over 50 countries, and Taiwan is probably one of my favorite places for cycling. So, thanks for bringing it up, Kevin. It was a good trip.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a great trip.
Yeah. And for those that are interested, if you want to see the photos from Kevin and my trip through Taiwan, and read more about what you need to know about cycling in Taiwan, just go to bicycletouringpro.com, type in Taiwan in the search bar, and you'll find everything you need. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thanks, Kevin, for joining me in Taiwan and for doing this today.
No worries. Do it again.
And thanks so much. All right. Bye, guys.